Welcome to It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and early 80s. This is Kara Siegel. I'd like to welcome in Michele Kasparian to the It's Been How Long podcast studio. Hey, Michele.
Hey, Kara.
Hey, thanks for agreeing to be on the podcast today.
Sure. Thank you for doing this.
Oh. Well, let's see here. It's been 43 years since we left the hallowed halls of Cherry Hill High School East. And what are you up to these days?
Well, I've been retired for the past year. I was a physician assistant in orthopedic surgery.
Oh, okay.
I retired from that a year ago, and I wish I'd known how much fun retirement was going to be. I'd have done it first.
Good plan.
So, yeah, my time is my own. I have a dog that I spend a lot of time with, and my mother is finally living out here in Arizona. A couple of years ago, my sister and I, because my sister also lives out here, and we convinced our parents to move from Cherry Hill out to Arizona because they were getting older, and we were worried about them in that house alone with the stairs. And so they agreed to move out. They moved out in December of 21.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
unfortunately, my father was very sick when they moved out here. He had cancer, and he died in March of 22.
I'm so
So
sorry. Mm.
yeah, it was difficult watching him go through that, but we were all grateful. We were all together when he breathed his last, and my sister was holding one hand, I was holding the other hand, and
Mm.
really couldn't have been, you know, more
Yeah.
ideal.
Yeah. And so, are you still taking care of your mother?
My mother doesn't really need taking care of.
Oh,
She's almost 90, and she's very feisty and with it, and she still lives in the apartment. They moved into a facility that starts you at independent living, then you can go to assisted care. It's graduated care. So she's still independent in the same apartment she was with my father, and she is happy as hell.
well,
She's
that's good.
doing really well. Yeah.
So is she showing you the way to be retired?
No, I think I sort of figured that out on my own. I'm still struggling a little bit with feeling useless because I sleep till whenever I want. I get up, I take my dog out, I play with my dog, and I read, I go have lunch with friends, I go see my mother, and what am I actually contributing to life? Not a whole lot these days.
Well, I bet as a physician assistant, you did a lot of contributing during a lot of years. So now you're entitled to have some time to do things you want to do.
I recently got I think what's going to be an interesting opportunity to volunteer at the Humane Society and possibly assist with veterinary surgeries.
Oh, wow.
So I'm quite excited about that. Um, I know, I mean, I'm there for my mother. My mother doesn't drive anymore, so she relies on my sister and me to take her places. And I do that, but in terms of actually doing something meaningful, I think this is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. That sounds great. So other than playing with your dog, other things you enjoy doing for fun? You're reading.
Yeah, I read. I do. Are you familiar with dot art or diamond dots?
No, I'm not.
It's basically making pictures with little tiny dots, and you use a stylus that looks like this. There's a tip on the end, and you apply each dot one by one to the canvas.
Oh, wow.
It makes some incredible pictures. It sounds very simple and tedious, but it
Do you
just
have
it
do you have an example of one? there?
I do. What's really fun about it is that I can make uh, dot pictures from photographs.
Mm,
So I've been making for all of my friends and family pictures of their cats and their dogs and their various pets. So this is my friend's cat. I don't know if you can see very well. That was
wow,
a
that's
photograph.
something. Oh my gosh. How long does something that big take to make?
If I work on it consistently, about 2 weeks. If I'm busy, it takes longer than that.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot of labor.
But I really enjoy it. If I
That's great.
I have some free time, I turn some music on that I really like and light a candle and just dot away.
That's great. That's great. So throughout these years, have you had any opportunities to travel?
Yeah, some. Not I'm not exactly a world traveler, but I actually went to France twice when I was in high school
Oh, really?
because my father is from Beirut, Lebanon,
Hmm.
and he had lots of relatives. There was war and unrest in Beirut, and so they kind of scattered. My father came to the United States, and a lot of his family went to France and Canada. So the summer I turned 15, I spent the summer in France with my father's cousin and his family.
Nice.
Um, I knew very little French when I got there, and of course, their three kids had good fun with me.
Oh, that's good.
I
What language did you take it at East?
French,
You did? Okay. Okay.
and I took some German with what was his name, Karl Muhlmann.
Mm.
I
Did
really
you have
liked.
Mrs. Petticoff for your
I
friend?
did, I did, and I was kind of a
Or Madame, excuse me, Madame Petticoff.
um, I was, I guess, because I'd heard so much French speaking in my family, I was kind of a snob. I thought she had a terrible French accent, but I kept that to myself.
Ah. Oh, that's funny. So, did you enjoy your time at East?
Uh, Probably, truthfully, I'd have to say no.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I was kind of a shy kid, and I was overwhelmed by all the people and the noise and bodies pressed together and in between classes, and um yeah, I found that a bit too much. I had friends. I had my little group of friends, and I was happy with that. But I mean, overall, I guess it was okay, but it's not one of the best times of my life.
hmm. Did you belong to any clubs or teams or anything?
I played the cello, so I was in orchestra a little while in freshman year with Mr. McGill,
I think that's right.
Eugene McGill, yes. And I played the cello, and I think I played in a pit orchestra for a while in freshman year, but I really didn't pursue it after that.
Okay. Did you have a job back in high school?
I did. I didn't work during the school year. My parents wouldn't allow that because they wanted me to focus on school. But I had some interesting summer jobs. Um, my mother and I started our own cheesecake business.
Oh, really?
I'm sure it was highly illegal. We didn't have permits and inspections and all that stuff, but we kind of peddled our cheesecakes throughout the neighborhood. I used to bake after school, and then I'd get on my bike and deliver them to people. It was called Mimi's Cheesecake because my name is Michelle, but my parents always called me Mimi.
Oh, okay.
And the way that came about is that my father was a native French speaker. So he didn't say Michelle, he said Michel.
Michelle.
And he'd stand in front of my crib and say Michel, say Michelle, and I'd say me. So it's like me.
Well, that's cute.
Well,
So what other, you said you had more than one job, so your illegal off the books cheesecake baking and
it was pretty short lived. My in between junior and senior years, and then after I graduated, I worked on a tobacco farm in Massachusetts where my cousins lived.
oh wow.
They grow shady leaf tobacco that they wrap cigars in Connecticut and Massachusetts. So I worked in the fields picking, but the interesting thing was when we had to we'd sew all the leaves up in the rafters on string. They'd hang upside down to dry. So I was climbing around in the rafters, hanging strings of tobacco.
Yeah.
It was interesting, very hard, dirty work.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like it. Sounds like it. So what did you do after graduation?
I went to University of Pennsylvania, like many of our classmates did. As a freshman, my roommate was Deborah Smead,
Yeah.
and it was a fun time. It was a fun time. I got tired of again, I was a shy person and I didn't talk that much, and Deborah was fun and bubbly, and so she got to know people, and it took me longer. And I'd open the room of our door, and there'd be someone there saying, "Oh, is Debbie here? Is Debbie here? Is Debbie here?" So I started calling myself Debbie's roommate, Michelle. It was Debbie back in those days. I know Deborah. Yeah.
And so you graduated from Penn, and then where'd you
Graduated from
go? What did you do?
Well, I graduated from school not knowing how to do anything because I went off to school with the idea of becoming a doctor. My father is a cardiologist and my mother's a nurse. Interesting story how they met. But I wanted to follow in their footsteps, so I said I was going to be a doctor. But it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. And I eventually kind of copped out and switched my major to French literature, which was fairly easy for me because I had spent time in France and I was fairly fluent. And I thought, if I do nothing else, I just have to get that degree. So I got my degree in French, which didn't please my parents very much. And I got out of school not knowing how to do anything. So I'm about to insult all the lawyers in our graduating class, and for that I apologize profusely. But at the time I didn't know how to do anything, so I went into law. I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend anyone,
I'm sure you're not. I'm sure you're not.
but I became a paralegal because the requirements for that were just a college degree. And having been a French major, when you learn to speak another language, when you're serious about it, you begin to get very proficient in your own language because you're aware of grammar and syntax and all that good stuff that most people don't even think about.
Yeah.
So I wrote well. And interestingly enough, I think having worked on the tobacco farm got me my first job as a paralegal in a firm in Center City because they asked me. I had put on my resume, other jobs include server, blah, 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 and farmhand. And they asked me, farmhand, tell us about that. So
Really?
I expounded on the delights of working tobacco for about half an hour. And I think that made me stand out to them.
Yeah. That is not an experience that too many people put on the old CV.
Yeah, yeah. So I was a paralegal for a while. I worked in Philadelphia at Pepper Hamilton and Sheets, we had a I don't know why this always stood out to me. We had an African receptionist, and she answered the phone, "Good morning, Pepper Hamilton and Chits." That always made me laugh. So I did that for a while and decided that I wanted to do something more than be a paralegal. But again, I apologize to all the lawyers in our class. Thought of going to law school made me sick. And I had always wanted to be a doctor. I had never lost interest in science and medicine. And I was already in my 30s at that time. My father advised me to be a physician assistant. So I took that route. I went to Rutgers, 3-year program, and got my Master of Science and my PA certificate. And I worked at the Phoenix VA my whole career.
So how did you go from Rutgers to Phoenix?
It was January I was living in a high-rise building outside of New York City, and it was January of the year I graduated. I was probably January 5th or 6th, and we were on our 8th blizzard of the year. I had bronchitis, and the heat in my apartment building went out.
Oh,
so so I'm sitting in front of the gas stove. I had all my clothes on, wrapped from head to toe. I'm sitting in front of the gas stove with the oven open and trying to study. And at that point, I was truly and utterly miserable. And
yeah.
I thought, worst case scenario, I can always blow the pilot light out and stick my head in.
Oh,
But I decided instead to move to Phoenix, where it was warm.
good
My
choice.
my sister was already out here. That was
Oh,
part
okay.
of what my decision.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I came out here and never looked back.
Okay. And so your first job as a PA was a at the VA?
At the Phoenix VA, yes. What was kind of nice about that, I worked there almost 30 years, but during that 30 years, I got to do a lot of different things. When I first started, I worked with the hospitalists, making rounds on inpatients and post-op patients, seeing to their other medical needs, because veterans in general, the population that we dealt with, were pretty sick people.
Hmm.
They all had hypertension, diabetes, heart stuff, you name it, they had it. So if they went in for some sort of procedure, their other conditions still needed management.
Sure.
So I worked with the hospitalists, and that was probably what I enjoyed, one of the best things that I enjoyed, because I learned a lot.
Hmm.
They were really eager to teach, and I asked a lot of questions, and I think I got a good broad-based knowledge. And then I worked in geriatrics, and then I wound up in orthopedic surgery for the last 10 years. So kind of a diverse.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you had a great uh diversity in your medical experiences.
It was never boring, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So was there a class or a teacher at East that influenced you, or someone from your high school days that influenced you?
There was this one teacher. I think I I think he might have been from Beck, not from high
Mm.
school. I don't even remember his name. He was an English teacher, tall,
Hmm.
skinny guy, and he said something that cut me to my heart at the time, and I remembered ever since. I must have been, I don't know, 14. He gave us a take home test and instructed us we could take all the time we needed up to a certain due date, but we weren't to open the book. So, of course, I got home and I opened the book without really even giving it much thought. So we went back to turn our papers in, and he looked at us very quietly, and he said in a quiet voice, I think you all learned something very important about yourselves this weekend. And that just cut me to my core because I had cheated.
Mm,
That stuck with me, 40 some odd years later, that's still with me.
yeah.
I wish I could remember who that teacher was, but I never forgot his words.
Yeah.
In fact,
So did you have a high school sweetheart?
I had lots of crushes.
Ah,
I was always one of those that admired from afar.
okay.
And part of that was my sister is 4 years older.
Hmm.
So when she was in high school, I was at Beck, and my sister plays the violin. I played the cello. So I was with her in orchestras and various things, and I got to meet a lot of her classmates who were older than I. So I had crushes on guys she went to school with.
I gotcha.
And interestingly enough, most of them had crushes on her
Yeah.
and didn't know I was alive.
So you still have friends from East that you're in touch with?
I do. I do. I don't see them very much being out here in Arizona,
Yeah.
but I had the opportunity to visit with Deborah Smead, one time. Oh, this was many years ago. She came out to Phoenix for a work conference.
Oh, nice.
And he and I got together, but I think that's the only time I've seen her. We keep in touch, we text back and forth probably a couple times a year. And I'm still very much very good friends with Debbie Segrist. Um, in fact, I recently in October took a trip back to Cherry Hill
Oh, okay.
just, just to see people. Even though my parents don't live there anymore, I had a lot of people I wanted to see. I got together with Debbie, and that was good fun. Got together with Matt Muscat. I
Did you
keep
get
in
to
touch.
see Joanne and Scott before they left or?
I did not. I
Okay.
did not. No. Um, but having listened to Matt's interview, I kind of have a feeling you're going to ask me about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we'll get to that in just a second. Is there anybody you were tight with in high school that you lost touch with?
Yeah. Um, One of my closest friends in junior high and high school was Patty Smith.
Hmm.
I think she was from Michigan, and I think she eventually moved back to Michigan.
Okay.
But I completely lost touch with her. I don't know where she is or what she's doing. Um, yeah, I can't really think of anyone else. She's the one who pops to mind.
Yeah. Well, if somebody knows Patty Smith out there, maybe we'll get you back in touch. Um, so any standout memories from high school? Um, an incident around that time doesn't have to necessarily be from a class, could be.
Yeah, yeah. The thing that stands out to me is again about one of the crushes I had on someone older than myself. Um, Unfortunately, he has passed away. Is Charlie Taylor. I
Hmm.
had a painful crush on Charlie Taylor, and he played the bassoon, and we were in either South Jersey Orchestra or All State Orchestra together. And I think my mother was driving us back and forth to a concert and held hands in the back seat with Charlie Taylor.
Ooh.
Yeah, I thought that meant we were going to get married, and of course, I was sorely disappointed.
So have you ever been back to the building since we graduated? And if
I
so,
have,
when, why, and how did it make you feel?
I have been back, but I haven't been inside.
Okay.
Um, the last time I was there was just this past October when I went to Cherry Hill. I drove by the building and looked at it from the outside, and thought, has it really been 43 years? And I said, yeah, I guess it has. And they drove on by.
So is there anything you wish classmates knew about you then or now?
I guess in high school, I was so shy and unsure of myself. And I did have friends, just a handful of people that I was close with. And I think most people didn't really know who I was. So I guess I'd like to say to people, I wish I'd been more outgoing and gotten more involved and gotten to know more of you than I actually did.
Yeah. So we're back in 1980 and you're looking out into the future, 40 years down the road. Is this where you saw yourself?
Absolutely not. I don't really know where I saw myself. When I was 18, I couldn't conceive of 40 years in the future. I really
Yeah.
couldn't. But I went off to college with the idea that I was going to be a doctor, and then life intervened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm looking back at my life, I would say that I've been very fortunate. I'm in a very good place now. As I
Good.
said, I love retirement.
Yeah. Um, so what's the best piece of advice you wish you would have given your 18-year-old self? Or was it that? Is that
No, I think I would have said, lighten up, kid. I was just far too serious about everything, and I didn't have a lot of fun. I didn't have as much fun as I should have, as I wished I would have.
mm. All right. So our fast and furious finish, as it were. Um, did you have a favorite TV show or a movie or a book from back in high school?
I probably have to say my favorite TV show was MASH.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Other than that, I don't really remember too much what I watched in high school.
Yeah. Um, did you have a favorite musical group or artist or genre of music that you like to listen to?
Interestingly enough, I never heard anything but classical music until I went to college.
Oh, really?
My father was a violinist, my mother's a pianist, and we only played classical music at home. When I went off to college, I started listening to Billy Joel and
Nice.
Simon and Garfunkel and the Beatles, and um, I really liked it. I think Billy Joel was probably one of my favorites.
Yeah. Mine too. Did you have a favorite place to eat or hang out with people from back in the day? And is it still there? When's the last time you were there?
The only thing I remember is I used to go with my mother. There was a restaurant in Cherry Hill Mall called Mrs. Dunderback's that had the best corned beef.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm quite sure it's not there anymore.
Uh,
I probably haven't been there since I was 18.
all right. So, to make this a little easier, because my yearbook had a lot of writing around. Um, do you remember that kid?
I do. I do. I wish she knew what I know now.
Yeah. Um, and so and you don't know the any more info about this story behind our wooden
No, no, I don't. And I have to be honest and say that it never occurred to me to ask.
yeah.
I just took it as one of those things, and it's kind of ironic that I ended up moving out to the Southwest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it's really not like that with guns on every
No,
corner.
no tumbleweeds rolling through the city of Phoenix, you're saying?
No, not for a while.
All right. So, is there someone in particular you have something you want to say to here? at the end of this podcast
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. I have something I want to say to Matt Muscat.
All right, the floor is yours.
Matt claims that I absolutely despised him when we first met in Mrs. Carpenter's class sophomore year in high school. And I am here to tell you, Matt, that sadly you're right. I am also here to tell you that you're one of the best friends I ever had. And I'm going to step out of my usual sarcastic, irreverent humor for a minute and just say that you have been and are very special to me. You mean a lot to me over the years. We've shared a lot. And yeah, I don't know when it happened, but I started liking you in spite of myself.
Well, I'm sure he will appreciate that. He couldn't quite explain to me what exactly he had done to offend you, because as I remember you, you're a very quiet individual, and I thought very thoughtful individual. And I think how could you have done something that to offend Michelle?
He was annoying. He hit it right on the head. He was annoying. He was like this little pesky puppy dog that wouldn't go away. And I have to admit, I wasn't very nice to him, and he kept coming back for more.
Yeah,
And like that old line, "Get away, kid! You bother me."
yeah, but it all worked out.
It all worked out, yes, and we're still friends 43 years later.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, Michelle, I can't thank you enough for coming on and
Thank
uh,
you.
uh, talking about what you've been up to, and then confirming Matt's assessment. And I wish you well out there in Arizona. Enjoy your retirement. You deserve it. You don't
Thank
always have to be productive,
you.
or you redefine productivity as I did, which was you make a list of things, including them take a nap, and you check it off, and therefore you've been productive for the day.
That I can do. That I
There
can
you
do.
go.
Very wise.
Well, enjoy your time with the shelter, because I think it sounds like you're really gonna love that experience. So,
I'm excited
best
about
of luck
that.
with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for doing this. I think it's a fantastic project.
Well, you're welcome, and I love catching up with people. And thanks for doing this. And if you talk to anybody and they haven't stepped up to sit in the chair, tell them it's okay.
I will. I will. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Take care. Bye. Thanks for joining me on It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and the early 80s. A shout out to my cousin Brad Corbett, whose podcast We Weren't Friends in High School inspired me to do this podcast, and whose advice and encouragement have been so helpful. Thanks also to my husband, Randy Cocktail, who read all the fine print on the podcast hosting website so I wouldn't have to. And thanks to Jeff Lyons, content consultant and guinea pig, and to Deborah Smead, also content consultant. And thank you to all our classmates who are listening in. See you next week.